Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I am calling this hearing to order. Well, good afternoon. It's 1 now. For the record, my name is Kendra Lara, and I am the District 6 City Councilor and the chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks. I'm joined this morning by my colleagues, Councilor Michael Flaherty at large, and Council President Ed Flynn from District 2. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, the City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom, and it is being recorded. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while ensuring that there is public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. This hearing is being recorded and it is being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ep@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing, and if you're interested in testifying virtually, please email Megan Kavanaugh at megan.kavanaugh@boston.gov for the link. Today's hearing is on docket number 0822. This matter was sponsored by the mayor and was referred to the Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks on April 26 of 2023. Docket 0822 is a message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Matt O'Malley as a member of the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Review Board for a term expiring April 24th, 2026. We are not joined by any members of the administration today, so I would just like to turn it over to Mr. O'Malley for any opening remarks, and then we'll jump right into questions. Mr. O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Great to be with you all virtually. It's always great to see my former colleagues who've joined as well. My name is Matt O'Malley. I, for 11 years, had the incredible honor of being the District 6 City Councilor, as well as for that entire duration, chaired the Committee on the Environment. It had a number of names through the decade plus, and it's great to see it continuing to evolve, recognizing the importance of the issues and the intersectionality as it relates to environmentalism and environmental justice. I was truly honored when Mayor Wu invited me to apply to nominate me to serve on the BERDO board, because it truly encapsulates a lot of my legislative work on this body. In 2012, I began working with then Mayor Tom Menino and then Chief Brian Sweat on the first BERDO ordinance. It was an acronym in those days for the Building Energy Reporting and Disclosure Ordinance. And it was a benchmarking tool. It seems quaint now, but it was quite controversial at the time, and it nearly didn't pass. A funny thing happened after it did indeed pass and it was signed into law by Mayor Menino, is that you began to see many large building owners recognize that environmental sustainability changes would often, almost always, save money. I've often said that every fiscal conservative ought to be an environmentalist, because switching to energy efficient utility usage is going to save you money. That was back in 2013. Fast forward to 8 years later, in my final year on the council, I worked very, very closely with first Mayor Marty Walsh, then acting Mayor Kim Janey, and then finally Mayor Michelle Wu, who was a tried and true partner of mine, particularly in environmental issues through the years, on BERDO 2.0. We kept the acronym, we changed the definition to mean Boston's Emissions Reduction Disclosure Ordinance, and the response couldn't have been more different than that initial piece of legislation. It passed unanimously, working with first Chief Cook, then now Chief Mariama White-Hammond. We engaged in as ecumenical a process as humanly possible. Talked to everybody, building owners, labor unions, activists. We had really a neighborhood by neighborhood approach. It was obviously hindered by the fact that it was happening during a pandemic, but nevertheless, we used all channels to make sure that we're able to engage with as many communities as humanly possible. It passed unanimously, and it's one of the most legislative pieces that I have the most pride in doing. After that, I went and I'm now working for Vicinity Energy, which is a district energy system, the largest in North America. We are in 12 U.S. cities, including Boston and Cambridge, where our corporate headquarters is based out of, and I'm overseeing our decarbonization efforts there. We are leading in best-in-class technology. It's been really worthwhile, both professionally and personally, to be able to continue this work on the other side of the ledger, as it were. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to continue to serve in a small way with this board. One thing that we were very intentional about when we were crafting the legislation is having an advisory board that really came from community. So I know there's some incredible folks, many of whom I know before. As you know, Madam Chair, I put some special language to make sure that the chair of the Environment Committee would have a seat as well. So I look forward to working with you and to clearly implementing some really innovative, strong solutions, use my expertise and my unique perspective as someone who was in the public sector and now in the private sector. Obviously, it goes without saying, I would recuse myself from any projects that are associated with Vicinity Energy, my current employer. But there's a real opportunity for us to lead and make this the best in the country, the best implemented plan in the country. And I'll just close with this because you've been generous with your time. As I mentioned, Vicinity's in 12 different cities. I have spent countless times talking to city council officials and city officials in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, in Kansas City, and Grand Rapids, to name 4 cities, about what we did with BERDO, and they're looking to replicate it as well. We know that every city, particularly older cities, the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. Nearly more than 2/3 in Boston. Philly, the number's closer to 3/4 because it's a more dense city. So by tackling and decarbonizing and electrifying and taking advantage of new technology of what's existing out there, to use both the carrot and the stick approach of a city working, we will have a profound, successful impact on lowering our greenhouse gas emissions, making sure that Boston is an international leader on sustainability.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Malley. I'm going to give the floor to my council colleagues to ask any questions, and then I will ask my questions at the end. For the record, I want to share that we have also been joined by Councillor from District 9, Councillor Liz Braden. Councillor Braden, welcome. I am going to start with Councillor at Large, Michael Flaherty. Councillor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's obviously great to be here. It's great to see you, Matt. I've served with a lot of members of the Boston City Council, a lot of green thumbs, and a lot of climate resiliency and climate justice champions. And oftentimes remind folks, Council President Flynn and I, our efforts would save the harbor, save the bay as part of the Boston Harbor cleanup. I like to talk about my efforts around single stream recycling and the famous Recycle with Michael program that we had launched at one point. But I have to say that of everyone I've served with, the councilor who's led the efforts around decarbonization and sustainability efforts, you have been second to none. Your time and attention to that issue as the lead author and lead community collaborator for BERDO, as I had a front row seat watching as it hatched as a member of the council, but also as Chair of Government Operations for portions of that. You also had mentioned the late Mayor Menino and our current Mayor, Mayor Wu, and his former council who also played an assist role as well as this was being rolled out. So I'm excited to be on here today. I'm excited, and it will be with great pleasure to vote in support of your candidacy, and just want to thank you for your time and service, not only just as a city councilor from District 6, but for someone that has always recognized the need for our city to do better. And when it comes to, I guess, reining in energy and water use for buildings, clearly BERDO speaks to that, but your career, in addition to all of the things that you've done for District 6 and for our city, the one that sort of jumps out most is efforts around climate resiliency and climate justice. So look forward to working with you in this new capacity. And as obviously as our chair will be a member as well. And any way that the city council can continue to play a lead and or supporting role to efforts to put our environment on the right path as we continue to address these issues globally, sign me up. So good to see you again, and look forward again to supporting your candidacy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Flaherty. President Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to former Councillor O'Malley for being here with us and explaining why this is such an important issue. Environmental justice is such an important issue. And when I started out on the council, I have to be honest that I didn't know all that much about environmental justice issues, but I learned a lot from Councillor O'Malley, and the way you explain things was very clear and concise, and you made a lot of us better city councilors through working with you, through your example, through your hard work, your professionalism. But most importantly, I would say it's your integrity. So just want to acknowledge that, Matt, and your contributions, exceptional contributions to the residents, not just of your district, but also throughout the city. So my question, I guess I have one question, and I was always curious about this. Maybe you could help us a little bit. What got you into being focused on environmental justice issues, Matt, especially at a young age when maybe other young people weren't as focused on that as we would think?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. President. Thank you for those exceedingly kind words from yourself and Councillor Flaherty as well. As Chair of Government Ops, Councillor Flaherty, we would not have gotten BERDO through but for your leadership. And second only to your famous grandma's coffee cake, the best gift you ever gave me was your Recycle with Michael reusable tote bag, which I use frequently as well. And similarly, Councillor Flynn, you were a huge part of that, making sure that we had all seats at the table in a real broad-based level of support. Thank you for the question of how I got into this. I think, growing up in the city, I remember being aware of recycling efforts, but not really quite sure what it meant. I often tell the story, which is a true story. I was in probably 4th or 5th grade, and my science teacher assigned us to read this book called 25 Ways to Save the Earth. And I digested it, and it sort of drew the real parallel of how small actions can have profound impacts. I remember being a kid, lucky enough to go to the Cape Cod for some portions of the summer, and I manufactured a stick with a magnet, so I'd go around to all the barrels at the beaches, collect the aluminum cans, turn them in, and make a tidy profit, and that, I think, underscores the economic impact. But to be completely candid, and I know this is something that obviously Kendra and I, the chair and I didn't serve together, but I know she feels the same way, Liz feels the same way. Local government can have a hugely profound impact on sustainability. And, in all candor, after the 2016 presidential election, I felt a new sort of sense of momentum that there would be not only a lack of leadership coming from the former administration, but outright, undoing some really strong regulations that had come from the Obama-Biden administration. So that's where we really pushed forward on community choice energy, the plastic bag reduction ban, and certainly BERDO. So, I think that I have a very special place in my heart for the Boston City Council. I think that we can, you all, formerly me, could really impact some important and effective legislation, and I love the fact that I had the opportunity to do so for 11 years. I'll close with this because I think you all will appreciate it. I came in through a special election, and it used to be committee assignments were often built up by seniority. So in 2011, I was the newest member, and therefore had the last sort of dibs on a committee, and it was the Environment Committee, Environment and Health at the time. And the joke was on my colleagues because it was the one I most wanted and held for my entire duration. So it's great to see it's continued to evolve and grow and is playing a more effective, continuing to play an effective role.
I think that is an incredible testament to the work that you've done and that we've done as a city to even consider that the Environmental Justice Committee is the last pick when right now it's like one of the top issues and everybody wants to work on it is really incredible. President Flynn, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please, if you have any more questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. Just want to say thank you to Matt. You made me and a lot of our colleagues better leaders because of your leadership and your availability of always being there and explaining things and being a great colleague. So I have no further questions and proud to support this nomination when it comes up for a vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, President Flynn. Councillor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Matt. How are you? Good to see you. I want to thank you for your incredible leadership in the environmental justice space. And before you got to council, when your time on council, and since you've left council, you're a trailblazer and constantly pushing the envelope and trying to get us to do better. And I really appreciate that. I feel every day when the news about wildfires and extreme cyclones and all of the extreme weather events that we're experiencing all over the world, it's like our planet, our lovely little planet, is in crisis, and our country is in crisis, and our city is facing some really critical challenges in terms of climate resiliency, and I think your leadership has made a mark on how we as a city address those issues and step up and lead, as Boston is known to do in these spaces. I'm delighted to know that other cities are looking at BERDO as a model that they might adopt to try and reduce their greenhouse emissions from buildings. We all know just how challenging that is. We live in an older city. We have lots of older buildings. There's a lot of resistance, maybe economic hesitancy from landlords and owners of buildings to grasp the nettle, so to speak, and tackle these issues. But with support from the state and from the city and from leadership across the board, I think it's really a critical moment, and I'm hoping that we can that BERDO will be a resounding success going forward. And I have absolutely no hesitancy in recommending you for this position. So yeah, I'm always interested to hear how you got into this and how you became such an environmental champion. And that was one of the questions I had. It's always interesting because I know how Councillor Lara has proposed, much more environmental justice education in our schools and teaching our kids about environmental justice and climate and all the impacts of how we live on this planet will impact our future for generations. So it's always interesting that those formative years of our lives in our schools and our parents and our teachers are the folks that set our values for the life ahead. And I think you're an example of that. And I know from my life that the teachers were people who instilled those values about environmental justice. So I think that's another shout out to our educators in the space about how important this work is. Anyway, I'm talking on. Congratulations. It's lovely to see you. I have no hesitancy in voting to support your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. Now, Mr. O'Malley, I'm going to move on to my questions. I asked 3 questions of all of the folks who were being confirmed. I am going to skip the first question because it's regarding your expertise and what you would be bringing. And I think that based on your work on the council and being one of the authors of this legislation, we can skip that question. So my first question is, what is your vision for a just transition for the city of Boston, and how do you imagine us collaborating with labor? That has been a big part of the work that I've been trying to do as we move towards decarbonization, making sure that labor is coming along with us. And that has been much easier in some moments and much harder and difficult to bring them along. And so BERDO and these regulations and what we build is going to have a really huge impact on our ability to do that. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about your vision for that transition.
It's a great question. And so I'll answer every piece of it. I'll begin by saying sort of the overall vision is a equitable, just, quick, and effective transition. And what I mean by that is making sure that we have all seats at the table. I'm also lucky enough, I serve on the Green Ribbon Commissions. We actually had a meeting this morning with many members of Mayor Wu's team as we're talking about grid preparedness and making sure that as we build out infrastructure, we're doing through the lens of equity. These can't all be sited in the same areas. We need to make sure that we have an equitable approach, not only to siting, but how we discuss these things and how we grow our support network. So it's obviously equity is a huge piece of it. This is what I think, in all candor, differentiates BERDO legislation from, say, Local Law 97 in New York City, which didn't have the same sort of equitable lens with which it was crafted. The labor piece is absolutely crucial. One of the reasons why we had a unanimous vote and I will give him credit, is Mayor Walsh, was really supportive of this in its sort of infancy. The way the BERDO 2.0 legislation came about was it began with the mayor's office, with then Mayor Marty Walsh, and then through the transition, it came to the council. But it was unlike any piece of legislation that I was involved with for 11 years. You had the executive and the legislative bodies working hand in glove. That almost never happens, and it was because we recognized the enormity of it. So having folks, with great labor backgrounds on the council as well, who were saying this is something that we're going to make sure that we address it together. The jobs piece is key. Growing the green economy, making sure there are supports for great Boston public schools like Madison Park Vocational Technical High School, to make sure that we have partnerships with labor unions to grow the green jobs, to make sure that the pipeline is there, because quite frankly, we don't have enough bodies to fulfill the enormous amount of work that lies ahead of us. So making sure that we're able to address that. I often bring up the economic piece, and I think this is something that Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and Mayor Wu have done well in talking about the Green New Deal. It's just not about environmental policy. It's about job creation. It's about the economic case. So we need to be bold. We need to act quickly, but we also need to be very, very deliberative and thoughtful in our approach to implementing a piece of legislation like this. So the stars really are aligning. Mayor Wu is a national leader on this stuff. I know that she feels it deep in her bones, the importance and the opportunity that we have right now, and the urgency of the moment. Similarly, Governor Healy is the most pro-climate governor we've had ever. She has put together a phenomenal team, so it's working hand in hand with them. We have a great opportunity with federal partners, so it's engaging at all levels of government, but also making sure it's rooted in community. I know that's something that this board is deeply involved in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. O'Malley. I think that we have a great opportunity, particularly in the job creation space, with the announced expansion of Madison Park, to really ensure that our young people and people in our communities are having access to this renewable economy, and that the Green New Deal is not just about environmental justice, but also about creating jobs. So I am very encouraged to hear that from you. And I think that the deliberative part is the place where we can do the most work, not just here and on the city council, but also at the level of the administration, to make sure that we're being bold and we're being deliberative and bringing people along with us. Thank you for that answer. The second question that I have is, as the review board, we are going to be working collaboratively to finalize regulations. And I'm curious, and I would like to hear, what considerations are you going to be making when developing these regulations? What lens are you bringing to the development of the regulations to the board?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, as my colleagues can attest, I always try to find that collaborative approach, and I brought that to the private sector. We'll bring it to the board as well. So it's listening to folks, finding the common areas of interest. I think that I bring a unique lens, having sat on that side of the table and now being on the business side, to understand some of the concerns and be able to relay concerns, that utilities may have. But also being driven by the urgency of this moment. So making sure that we're able to accommodate. So much of it is around coastal resiliency as a coastal city like Boston. So making sure that plays a large role. Obviously, the equity lens has to drive what we are doing in terms of, particularly as we think about some of the investments that we make relative to housing, relative to tree canopy, relative to electric car infrastructure, to name three. Making sure that we're able to include and center community at all aspects when we think about how we're going to build out different networks, how we're going to work. Looking at ways to really partner with the federal government on some of these IRA funds that are available for municipalities to help fund some of these really ambitious, expensive, but incredibly important projects. So I probably prattled on more than you want. I think my approach will be a collaborative way, looking through different lenses and making sure that every voice has a seat at the table and an ability to work, to express themselves. With a PS on that, I think it's important that we get out in community and explain what this is. I think a lot of folks are somewhat familiar with BERDO, may not understand, and I'm talking about the development community to the sort of civic community to the environmental impact. I would be honored to, along with colleagues from the board, get out to different community groups, talk about it, answer questions, have sort of a office hour type situation to increase awareness. Obviously use tools that we could use, such as, inserts in water and sewer bills, for example, making sure we have materials that are translated into every language, making sure that we have ability to, I hate to use the word educate the populace, but make sure that folks know what we're doing and how they can be a part of it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. And my final question, you talked about your transition into the private sector, and you talked about your role at Vicinity, and in your opening remarks, you said that you would be willing to recuse yourself from any decisions that were in alignment with Vicinity, and I really appreciate that. I think some of my concern was about a possible conflict of interest. Can you, for the record, share a little bit about what Vicinity does, what your role is, and how why there is a possible conflict of interest, just so that for people who are watching, they understand why you would be recusing yourself from it?
Sure. And I guess I would respectfully say, I don't know that there would be a conflict of interest, but I would happily recuse and of course, recuse myself from any of Vicinity's clients, just as other members of the board who may come from labor unions or planners or architects would do the same. So Vicinity Energy is the district energy system. We provide heating for 70 million square feet in Boston and Cambridge. It's through an underground network of pipes, about 26 miles of pipes, mostly in downtown Boston, the financial district, as well as Kendall Square. And what my job, I am the chief sustainability officer. So I'm not in business development. I'm in sort of the technical as well as sort of the government oversight, where we are working on decarbonizing. So it's really, really interesting work that we're doing. We're implementing a 3-tier decarbonization strategy. Right now, we create steam through mostly a process known as cogeneration, which is the most efficient way to burn fossil fuel, but you're still burning fossil fuel. So we are moving away from that with the installation of electric boilers, a probably 42 megawatt heat pump, which will leverage energy from the Charles River to create steam, and then thermal storage, which will allow us to peak shift. So when offshore wind comes online towards the end of this decade, we have a direct interconnect to the grid. We'll be able to procure it at what's known as a wholesale or an interconnect rate, and then we'll be able to store it, which will allow us to create a certified renewable thermal energy, which will have a profound impact on decreasing Boston's greenhouse gas emissions among our buildings. Again, as other members of the board who may work for different companies, would of course recuse myself from anything involving our clients. But again, look forward to bringing my unique expertise to this board to help facilitate and make sure it's a success.
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Malley. I want to share that we have been joined by the City Councilor from District 1, Gabriela Coletta. Councilor Coletta, we are doing questions for Mr. O'Malley, so if you have any, you have the floor, and if not, we are going to move to a close.
Thank you so much, Chair, and apologies for being late. I was coming from Charlestown from a groundbreaking, but I just wanted to swing by and just say hello to former Councilor O'Malley. He was a great ally during the council while I was a staffer, and strong champion for clean energy. I do just want to ask Mr. O'Malley about other organizations that he intends to bring into the fold. I know that there was, through BERDO, through the initial filing, and
I think we lost her.
We did, but I think I got the gist. If you'd like
Yeah,
me to
please,
stab at it.
and we'll make sure that Councilor Coletta gets the response.
Of course, and great to hear your voice, Councilor. Thank you for your great work. It's a great question, and I think it dovetails nicely on what we were just saying. BERDO 2.0 was a success because, and this gets to, I think, one of your questions as well, Madam Chair, Chief Whitehammond and I and Commissioner Brizia sat down with a better city. We sat down with the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. We sat down with Local 103. We sat down with ACE. We sat down with Mothers Out Front. We sat down with the Sierra Club. There's the BCEC, the Boston Clean Energy Coalition, which is sort of a conglomerate of many of those groups. And we made sure that everyone understood what we were doing, asked for honest feedback, encourage folks to push us. We couldn't always line up perfectly on every aspect of every issue on sort of the overarching themes, but we came pretty darn close. And that's precisely the spirit that I will bring to this board. I am so focused on making sure that this is a success. We've done, I don't need to minimize our efforts because it was a lot of work and it was hard, but in many ways we've done the easy part. We passed it, we built a coalition. Now comes the hard part, making sure that it's done well. And I will ensure that we have every seat at the table filled with relevant stakeholders, hear people out and make sure that we can implement as successful and effective decarbonization strategy that any city on the planet has undertaken. Thank
you so much. So thank you for that answer. Thank you for all of your work in getting us to the place that we are today, both in the public sector and now in your role in the private sector. I hear lots of stories from Chief Whitehammond about how much work it actually took to get BERDO done. And so I definitely empathize, and we are a better city for it. So I want to extend my gratitude just as my council colleagues have. I appreciate your graciousness as we tried to get a date down that worked for all of us as the council moved through redistricting and budget and rescheduling a couple of times. So I'm glad that we were able to get you here. I am excited to put this forth to the council. We initially weren't supposed to have a meeting until the 28th, but it looks like we're going to have a special meeting next week. So this Wednesday. So that means that we'll be able to put it on the floor for a vote. I appreciate your willingness to recuse yourself. To me, I want to make sure, this is why I wanted to make sure that we had this, so that we had it on the record and we could be clear, not only with the council, but members of the public about what your role is. I think it would be an incredible asset, and I am excited to put it forth for a vote next Wednesday.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. And Councilor Braden, thank you, my friend of 20 years, for your incredible, great work as well. So thank you very much.
Beautiful. This committee hearing of the Environmental Justice, Resiliency and Parks Committee is now adjourned. Thank you all so much.